in your works, there is, especially, I mean, there is a rhythm that sort of originates and I suppose is based on the, I mean, I would say that there are associations with some sort of drum.
Definitely, most definitely. The drums play a very important role in the cultural history of Jamaica. At one stage, the drums during the time of slavery were banned, right? We see at a much later period, during the emergence of the Rastafari movement, which is in its inception was anti-colonial, unlike now where you find a lot of fashion, people wearing dreadlocks and wearing red, gold and green. When I was initiated into the Rastafari movement, I was initiated in the Rastafari movement politically, you know, the inception, the birth, the roots of the Rastafari movement is political. It is anti-colonial, you know. It's just that over the years it has been watered down, so to speak, and there's a lot of gibberish, you know. But the roots of it is anti-colonial, anti-imperialist. That is the root of Rasta. This is why Rastafari in its inception was feared, and even now to some extent. I mean, there's a book on Bob Marley where there is documented evidence that the CIA tried to infiltrate the Rastafari movement. On a number of occasions in the past, Rastafari brethrens have figured in overthrow attempts. There was this famous Henry case. You know, there was a Coral Gardens case where a lot of Rastas were killed in Montego Bay. So in the inception, the drums, the Rasta drums, you know, was the base of the music. And our young musicians then, people like Rico Rod Ricketts and Ernie Ranglin, who were trained by the Catholics in these boys' home, used to play classical music and they couldn't really relate to it. So they had to go on the Rasta camps, right? To find something that they could relate to. And this is where the roots of reggae is, you know, the base of reggae is the Rasta drums, you know, and the drums play a very prominent role in our music. It's just now that, you know, a lot of reggae musicians stop using the akete drums and the funde drum, but on earlier music, you could hear that repeater and the akete drum, you know, especially in the early ska music, it was very, very prominent. But nevertheless, even the rhythm, the drum, the one drop, right? The drum and bass rhythm that we hear frequently in reggae, it's patterned off the Rasta drum beat, you know, that kind of one drop on the bass drum, boom, boom, you know. So you're right, you know, when you say there is this musical drum pattern which is there every time in the work. In fact, when I write my works originally and before I develop it, you know, in terms of musical, it's the drums that is used as that early base for it, and all of my poems can be read with just pure percussions.
Do you actually, because when I saw you performing at the Apples and Snakes on Saturday, you were just reciting and there were no other no instruments involved. Do you actually perform with drums?
Yes, I perform with drums.
And other musical instruments?
And other musical instruments. In fact, I got a band called AK7.
Right, that's the band that actually
was
backing band on
the album. And in fact, we did our debut tour in France several months ago, our debut overseas tour, and it was very successful. And I enjoy performing with a band, as well as I enjoy tremendously performing solo, because then one gets to appreciate the rhythm in the poetry much more when, you know, like the Apples and Snake. I enjoy reading. I enjoy those kind of reading because it's small and you can see the people. You can look in their eyes. You know, you can actually speak to the people. You know, so I prefer small audiences as opposed to big audiences. But then I have no objections of performing before a whole stadium of people because my major aim and objective is to communicate.
Right. Well, I ask that question because I know that Linton Kwesi Johnson said on a few occasions that he actually prefers to read his poetry without the backing band because he thinks that his words might get trivialized by the music and that sometimes people's attention would waver.
That's true. But then again, you know, I personally believe that music in a way can enhance what is saying. If the music is properly arranged, then it can accentuate what you're saying. It's like splashing red on the wall and then putting something else over it, you know. I mean, your attention is immediately drawn to that red splash on the wall, and then what is on top of it. It's just the same thing with music. Music, it's like music and poetry is like an artist putting on canvas various colors, combining various colors to create one mood. You know, this is how I see it.
Do you actually play any instruments yourself?
Well, I play a bit of percussion, and at the moment I'm learning to play the guitar because more and more I'm getting into music. I find myself getting very attracted to the creation of music. So at the moment I am learning to play a guitar, and then I believe it is dangerous when you're working in a particular medium and you're ignorant as to what goes on, you know. I believe, you know, if a worker works in a factory, he should try to understand the mechanics of the machinery, you know. And this is what I'm trying to do, to understand the mechanics of music. Hence why I'm learning to play the guitar, which is, you know, very easy to play. It's portable, and one can do a lot of composition on it and all that.
Right. So, do you, your next album, is it going to be with AK7?
Definitely.
With
AK7 is my personal backing band. Even if the present members leave, and we have been together for almost 3 years now, and we are going much more closer because the musicians were handpicked. I didn't just arbitrarily call musicians. These are musicians that I've known for years. I've known the brothers for years. Several of us, not all of us, several of us attended the Cultural Training Center around the same time. I've been watching them and listening to them play for years. So when I decided finally that I was going to have a personal backing band, I called them individually and asked them if they were available, because I also know their outlook towards music. My musicians in generally are displeased at what is going on in the reggae industry, the same rhythms played over and over, the lack of proper arrangement, the very unprofessional approach which a lot of musicians take towards the music. And on a whole, my musicians believe that art should be used for not merely not merely entertaining, but educating. So we see things similarly. We see the music similarly. We see the utilization of the art in similar ways. Henceforth, we are very compatible. So of course, the next album, and by the way, the next album will be called Broke Out or Breakout. Right?
What do you think about sort of experiments that some people make, like recently Sly and Robbie recorded an album for Material Studio that, I mean, it uses, and the usage of technology in music, like synthesizers and...
what I have to say about that, all power to them. I do experiment too. My album Pressure Drop, it had on a jazz piece, it had on an experimental...
Bit of tango even at
yes,
some point.
you know, it had on an experimental piece of disco music in that we just used drums, bass, and lead guitar and percussion. We didn't use anything like synthesizer or anything like that. That was experimental. Tell Me True, which will be on this 12-inch, will be from the album. It's a rock tune. You know, we use rock guitar and we use synth drums, you know, electrical drums. As I said before, I have nothing against technology. Music is an international language, and one should not be negative towards experimenting. You know, I mean, we should always experiment if we're doing it in a very positive way and trying to advance, as opposed to regress or to hold back, you know, because one of the problems of the world today is that these older politicians, you know, we have, you know, who are afraid of change, you know, afraid of changes, you know, and we should never be afraid of changes, you know. We should always be prepared to make changes, to struggle, to change, you know, the things that, you know, have been stagnant are not moving, you know. I'm not saying that we should change everything, because there are some things, I mean, since time immemorial, which are positive, and we should not just change things for the sake of changing, but where it is necessary and where it can advance, you know, the betterment of humanity, we should change. We should try changes, you know, like changing the situation of the world now as it is.
Would you like to say something to the, I mean, have you got any particular message to the Polish listeners and readers that you'd like to express?
Well, I've been following what has been happening in Poland for the past 2 years and a little bit more, and I sympathize with the people of Poland, and I'd like to say to them, have courage and endurance, and that they are not alone in their struggles, and I'd like to believe that they also support us in our struggles, and that the people's will must prevail, and one love, you know.
Thank you very much, Mr. Onuora. Thank you for your time.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.